Sheriff Nanos called it one of the most promising leads in this entire case. Think about that phrase for a second. One of the most promising leads in a kidnapping investigation, in a case that had 13,000 public tips pouring in a case the FBI treated as a top priority from day one. And this was the lead they were most excited about. 201 days. Now, there is a word that appears in every report, every press conference, every update on this backpack. A word the FBI used, a word Nanos used, a word every outlet used. And most people who heard it understood it to mean one thing. It does not mean that thing. The FBI's Operational Technology Division ran a forensic analysis of that doorbell camera footage and confirmed a specific model, a specific size, a specific brand, publicly on February 12th, 2026. That is not a guess. That is not an estimate. That is a formal forensic determination from a federal agency. That precision should have meant something. So, why are we still here? Something about this investigation's most promising lead did not do what everyone assumed it would do. And the reason is sitting in plain sight inside the official record. Here is what this video requires you to carry from the start. The night of January 31st into the early morning of February 1st, 2026, someone entered Nancy Guthrie's property wearing a face covering, black gloves, a gun holster, and a backpack. Her Nest doorbell camera captured it. At 1:47 in the morning, that camera disconnected. Her pacemaker app lost contact at 2:28. What happened in that window has never been publicly established. What investigators did have was the footage, and from that footage, over the next 11 days, they worked to extract everything the technology would give them. On February 10th, the FBI released the images publicly. The suspect, a male with a mask, gloves, and a holster. The footage was grainy, black and white, infrared, but there was something specific on his back that stood out. 2 days later, February 12th, 2026, the FBI made an announcement. They had spent those 2 days running what they call a forensic analysis of the doorbell footage. Not simply watching it, enhancing it, processing it. The FBI's Operational Technology Division, a unit built specifically for extracting forensic intelligence from digital media, applied their tools to every frame available. This was not a visual comparison. This was a technical process designed to produce a defensible conclusion, not a theory, not a profile, a product. The question is not whether that announcement mattered. It mattered enormously. The question, and the one nobody has fully answered, is what it established and what it left completely untouched. The question is what it left unanswered and why that answer has been sitting in the official record for 201 days.
It is the private label of Walmart, Ozark Trail, 25 liters, and you could see those distinctive reflective straps that we saw in the surveillance video. So they're saying that this is, in fact, the specific backpack that they are looking at.
That clip is the beginning of something very specific, not the end. What the FBI announced on February 12th was this. After forensic analysis of the doorbell camera footage, the suspect's backpack had been confirmed as a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. That is the model. That is the size. That is the brand name. And then, on February 16th and 17th, Sheriff Nanos went further. He told reporters that this backpack was not just identified by model. It was, in his words, the only clothing item on that suspect's body that had been, I want you to hear his exact phrasing, definitively identified. Not the mask, not the holster, not the gloves, not the jacket, the backpack. The only item out of everything visible on that suspect. The only one the investigation could point to and say, that is specifically this product. I know this question is coming because it comes up constantly, so let me give you the record directly. The mask. Investigators believed it may have come from Walmart. Nanos said so publicly. But the Pima County Sheriff's Department issued a written statement that the clothing items may have been purchased from Walmart, but is not exclusively available at Walmart. That statement is not identification. It is belief. The holster. An active duty police officer told Fox News Digital that the shape of the holster matched a product available at some Walmart locations. One source, unnamed. That is expert opinion from a single anonymous individual, not a formal identification from the FBI or PCSD. Verdict. The mask and holster are partially verified as items of interest. The backpack is the only item in this physical evidence package that received a formal, official forensic identification. Nanos confirmed that distinction himself, so the backpack stands alone. One item, one forensic confirmation, and a silence that has lasted 201 days. Here's the word I mentioned in the opening, identified. Most people who heard it understood it to mean the case is close to solved. They have the backpack, they know where it came from, a name is coming. That understanding is incorrect. And the gap between what the word means and what people assumed it meant, that is where 201 days went. When Nanos says definitively identified, here's what he means. The FBI took the footage, enhanced it, ran it through forensic analysis, and confirmed that the backpack visible on that suspect matches a specific commercial product. The Ozark Trail Hiker Pack, 25 liters, sold exclusively at Walmart, new. That is identification of an object, not identification of a person, not identification of a purchaser, not identification of a transaction, an object. Now, I want to be precise here because this matters. Identifying an object in a criminal investigation is genuinely valuable. It is not meaningless. It gives investigators a traceable starting point. It narrows the field. It opens a pathway, but it is only the first step. Step 1, you know what the object is. Step 2, you try to trace where that object came from. Step 3, you use that trace to reach the person who had it. Now, I want to be clear about why each of those steps matters independently, because skipping over the gap between them is how this backpack story gets misread. Step 1 is what the FBI did in February 2026. They confirmed what the object was, with precision, officially. Step 2 is what Walmart made possible. Purchase records, store surveillance, a cooperative corporate partner. The mechanism existed. The records were real. Step 3 is where the public record goes silent. No official statement has established that the records in Step 2 produced a named person in Step 3. And the reason for that silence is documented. It exists in the official record, and it is not what anyone reported it to be. 13,000 public tips, FBI as top priority, Walmart cooperating fully, and investigators had completed Step 1. The question, the one the official record has never fully answered in public, is what happened when they ran Step 2. Here is what everyone, investigators, media, the public, understood to be true in February 2026. Walmart exclusive. That meant one retailer, one purchase record system, one corporate partner that could, in theory, trace every sale of this specific backpack going back months, by date, by location, by transaction, and for many of those sales, by buyer. So the logic ran like this. FBI identifies the model. The model is Walmart exclusive. Walmart provides records. Investigators narrow to buyers matching the suspect's profile in the relevant time frame and geography. And eventually, a person. That logic is not wrong. A retired supervisory FBI agent named Jason Pack told Fox News Digital, quote, Walmart should be able to trace back all sales of the backpack over a specific period of time. That will create many regional leads as agents track down and account for every single backpack. Pack's point was not theoretical. He was describing a standard federal technique, a methodology that has worked in other cases. The logic is that every transaction creates a record, and every record creates a potential investigative path. And when the retailer is cooperative, which Walmart was, that path stays open. So investigators walked it. And then Walmart did exactly what investigators needed. Nanos confirmed it publicly. Walmart provided records of all Ozark Trail Hiker purchases on online and in-store going back several months. Not just Tucson, the whole state. Investigators spent days at local Walmart stores reviewing surveillance footage. So, the FBI had the model, Walmart had the records, investigators had the footage. The chain was intact. Day 201. No arrest. Before I tell you what broke the chain, I need to show you something that happened with a completely different piece of evidence. Because what happened with the gloves is not a side story. It is the closest mirror this investigation has to the backpack question. And when you see the two side by side, something becomes very clear.
People toss stuff over here all the time, but the fact that they found a glove that they're now testing over here is pretty critical.
2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, a field beside a road. In mid-February 2026, investigators recovered a black glove. And what the FBI confirmed publicly on February 15th was this. A spokesperson told USA Today directly, "This glove appears to match the gloves of the subject in the surveillance video." Think about what that means. 2 miles from the home. A glove that visually matches what the masked suspect was wearing on the night Nancy disappeared. The glove was sent to a private laboratory in Florida. Tested. A DNA profile was extracted from an unknown male. That profile was run through CODIS, the FBI's national database of criminal DNA profiles. On February 17th, 2026, the Pima County Sheriff's Department issued an official statement. I am quoting it exactly. There were no DNA hits in CODIS. At this point, there have been no confirmed CODIS matches in this investigation. No match. A glove that appeared to match the suspect's glove. DNA from a real person. Run against the national database. And nothing. Most outlets reported this as a dead end. A setback. A lead that went nowhere. It is not a dead end. It is a completed forensic result. Here is the distinction. And I need you to hold it carefully because it is the exact same distinction at the heart of the backpack question. A dead end means the process stopped. A completed forensic result means the process ran its full course and produced an answer. In this case, the answer was, this DNA belongs to someone not in the federal criminal database. And then, in early March 2026, Nanos told a local Tucson news station, KVOA, exactly who the DNA belonged to. His words, "The owner of the glove we found working at a restaurant across the street. It has nothing to do with the case." The DNA on the glove was traced to a specific person. Working at a restaurant across the street from Nancy Guthrie's home, that person was not connected to the case. That is what a complete forensic result looks like. The process worked. It identified a real person. That person was cleared. The evidence pointed away from the case with precision. Now here's the question I want you to sit with. The glove ran its full process. Recovered object forensic analysis traced to a person. Completed. Person cleared. What happened when the backpack ran the same three-step process? Because the answer to that question, which the real answer, the one sitting in the official record, is not what anyone reported it to be. In March 2026, Sheriff Nanos was projecting confidence publicly. He told NBC News he believed investigators were definitely closer to solving the case. He said he believed an arrest would eventually be made. He called the crime targeted, deliberate. Nancy Guthrie was not a random victim. That confidence is not performance. It reflects what investigators believed they were building toward. The investigation was moving, and it made what Nanos said just days earlier, on March 3rd, in an interview with NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz that aired on the Today Show, land with a weight that almost no one fully processed at the time. Read that one more time. Maybe it wasn't purchased out of Walmart. The backpack is new. It is exclusive to Walmart when new. Walmart cooperated. Records were provided. Investigators spent days inside Walmart locations. And the lead investigator on this case, on March 3rd, 2026, said, maybe it wasn't purchased there at all. Walmart's purchase records are powerful, but only for new sales. If someone buys this backpack at Walmart and then sells it on eBay through any private transaction, that second sale does not appear in Walmart's records. The original buyer shows up. The person who eventually carried the backpack does not. So here's what actually happened. Walmart cooperated. The records were complete. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage inside Walmart locations for days, and if this particular backpack was acquired through a secondary market, every single one of those records would be accurate, complete, and irrelevant to finding the person who carried it into Nancy Guthrie's home. That is not an investigative failure. That is a structural ceiling. And there is something sitting underneath that ceiling that is harder to look at directly. Criminally Obsessed brought in an FBI expert who looked at this footage and described the backpack as a kit, not random gear, not improvised equipment. A kit, assembled deliberately. Each item chosen for a purpose. A deliberate kit. And if the acquisition of that kit was deliberately routed through a secondary market to avoid a traceable retail transaction, then what you are looking at is someone who thought about the evidence trail before they showed up at that house. Think about what that means for the investigation, because it means the backpack's identification, precise, verified, officially confirmed by the FBI, hit a ceiling that was potentially built into the acquisition itself. I want to address something directly, because this objection is everywhere, and the frustration behind it is completely legitimate. A lot of people watching this case have concluded that the backpack lead went nowhere because investigators mishandled it from the start, that a more experienced team would have run those records differently, that something was dropped. What the evidence record actually shows is this. The documented failures in the early days of this investigation are real and verified. Fox News Digital reported in April 2026 that the lead detective supervising the case at the time of Nancy's abduction had never personally worked a homicide before being put in charge of that unit. That reporting stands. Those failures exist. But here's the boundary that matters. There is no verified evidence that investigator error explains the specific ceiling the backpack trail hit. The structural explanation, Nanos' own March 3rd disclosure, is that the backpack may have entered the suspect's hands outside of Walmart's retail system entirely. If that is true, the same records, run by the most experienced investigators in the country, would reach the same wall. Verdict. The institutional failures in this case are verified and documented. The claim that those failures specifically explain what happened to the backpack lead is not supported by the evidence record. These are two different arguments. Collapsing them into one is how the real question gets buried. The real question is not whether the investigation was well run. The real question is what the backpack identification actually established and where the evidence process hits its structural limit. One more objection before I get to the analysis, and this one is worth taking seriously. Many people following this case believe that investigators already know who purchased the backpack, that the Walmart records produced a name, that the silence is strategic, that an arrest is coming, and the investigation is simply protecting it. Here is what the official record actually says. Nanos has said he believes an arrest will be made. He has said investigators are definitely closer. He has said he thinks he knows why the crime was committed, that he believes Nancy Guthrie was targeted deliberately. That language sounds like knowledge, and it may be. But here's the distinction. Believing you understand the motive of a crime, believing you know the target and the purpose, is not the same as the Walmart purchase records having produced a named buyer. Those are two separate investigative claims. And Nanos himself was the one who disclosed on March 3rd that the backpack may have come through a secondary market. That disclosure does not suggest investigators had already identified the buyer. It suggests they were still working to map the acquisition pathway. Verdict. The belief that investigators are holding a known suspect is partially verified. Nanos' language supports continued investigative confidence. The specific claim that the backpack records identified a named buyer is not supported by anything in the public record. Now, the word, the one I told you about in the cold open, the one everyone used, the one the FBI used, the one Nanos used, the one every outlet used. Identified. Here's what it actually means in an evidence investigation. Identifying an object means confirming what that object is, its model, its manufacturer, its specifications. The FBI's Operational Technology Division ran a technical forensic process that confirmed this backpack is a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. That is identification. What identification does not mean, what it has never meant in any evidence investigation, is that the object has been traced to the person who possessed it. That is attribution. And attribution requires a completely separate chain of evidence. Object identified, object exclusive to one retailer, retailer's records obtained, records reviewed, secondary market possibility disclosed by the lead investigator, no public attribution of a person. Those are not the same thing. And here is why that distinction matters beyond this single backpack. Look at every piece of physical evidence in this investigation and apply the same three-step test. The backpack, identified by model and size, retail records obtained, secondary market possibility disclosed, no person publicly attributed. The glove, recovered, DNA extracted, profiled, traced to a restaurant worker across the street from the home, cleared. The process completed, zero connection to the case. The mask, believed, not confirmed, to be from Walmart. Brand not identified. No official forensic identification of any kind. The holster, visible in footage. One unnamed law enforcement source gave expert opinion on a possible product match. No official identification, no retail trace, no connection to a person. The mixed DNA from inside Nancy's home, extracted, complicated by multiple contributors, running across multiple laboratories. As of July 30th, 2026, Nanos told ABC News, the hair was done, and there was nothing. There is a pattern across that entire physical evidence package. Every item went through some version of the three-step process, and not one of them, not the backpack, not the glove, not the mask, not the holster, not the DNA, has produced a public attribution of a person connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. The counter-argument. And I am going to state it clearly because it deserves to be heard. Investigators may know far more than the public record shows. Nanos has said so repeatedly. Active kidnapping investigations routinely withhold evidence to protect case integrity. A sealed search warrant affidavit, sitting at the center of a $3.25 million civil claim from a man detained in this investigation, tells us that investigators presented probable cause to a judge based on evidence that has never been disclosed publicly. That sealed record exists, a judge reviewed it and approved it. That counter-argument is correct, and I am holding it without dismissing it. But here is what it does not resolve. Every piece of physical evidence the public has been able to examine followed the same arc. An object was identified. That object's identity, through the forensic process available, did not produce a public attribution of a person. Whether that is because investigators are protecting a known result or because the evidence genuinely hit structural limits, the pattern of the public record is the same. And that pattern holds across every evidence object this investigation has produced publicly. Not one of them broke through to the third step. Identification of objects is not the same as identification of people. This investigation has demonstrated that distinction more clearly than any criminal investigation in recent memory. And most of the coverage never named it. That is what is sitting in the official record. In plain sight, in the Nanos disclosures, in the PCSD statements, in the FBI's carefully worded announcements, the evidence established what objects were present. It has not established publicly who brought them there. Here's what the evidence actually establishes. The FBI correctly identified the backpack. The forensic analysis was precise. The Operational Technology Division's determination that it was a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. That stands. That is not in question. Walmart cooperated fully. The records existed and were provided. The The investigative strategy was sound, identifying an exclusive retailer, obtaining purchase records, reviewing store surveillance. That logic works. It has produced results in other cases, and then Nanos himself disclosed that investigators were examining whether the backpack was acquired through a secondary market. If it was, and the public record does not confirm that it was, only that investigators were examining it, the retail records, however complete, could not reach the buyer. That is a structural ceiling, not an investigative failure. The glove produced a complete forensic result, a real person, cleared. That is the forensic process working precisely as it should and pointing away. The mask, the holster, believed but never officially identified. The mixed DNA from the home still being processed as of July 2026. The hair sample produced nothing. What I cannot tell you, and I will not pretend otherwise, is what investigators know that is not in the public record. The sealed warrant affidavit exists. A judge reviewed real evidence and approved it. Nanos has said he believes an arrest will come. Those are not nothing. What I can tell you is this. Every piece of physical evidence the public has been able to examine followed the same arc. An object was identified. That identification did not produce a public attribution of a person. And when you lay all of them side by side, the backpack, the glove, the mask, the holster, the DNA, something becomes visible that no single evidence update could show you. The investigation has not stalled because of one bad lead. It has encountered the same ceiling, expressed through different evidence objects, across 7 months. Identification completed, attribution unreached, every time. That is not a string of individual failures. That is a description of where this case actually stands. And it is a description that the evidence produced, not one that was imposed on it. Every object in this investigation's physical record has told the same story. The objects were real. The processes were real. The people who would connect them to a suspect remain unidentified in the public record. That is the answer to the question in the title. The backpack was identified. What did that identification establish? It established the model. It established the retailer. It established a purchase record universe that investigators worked through. And it hit a ceiling the lead investigator named himself in March 2026. A ceiling that has nothing to do with forensic capability and everything to do with how that backpack may have entered the suspect's hands before it ever entered this case. I said at the start, the reason is sitting in plain sight inside the official record. It has been there since March 3rd, 2026, in a quote from the lead investigator. In an interview most outlets filed as a routine update and moved past. The Nanos disclosure of March 3rd, 2026, buried in reporting that most outlets treated as a routine update, is the clearest public explanation this case has offered for why its most promising lead produced no public result. Not investigator incompetence, not a conspiracy of silence, a structural limit on what retail purchase records can establish when the acquisition pathway runs outside the retail system. Identification of an object, traceability of that object's retail history, attribution of the person who possessed it. 3 separate evidentiary acts. This investigation completed the first. The second hit a documented structural ceiling. The third has not been publicly achieved. There is a pacemaker out there that stopped transmitting a signal at 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, 2026. There is a family that has had to watch this investigation from the outside, the same as everyone else. There is a reward sitting at $1,202,500, unclaimed. That number says something. It says that someone somewhere knows something the investigation needs. 201 days. The FBI still classifies this as an active kidnapping for ransom investigation. If this kind of analysis, separating what the evidence establishes from what it is assumed to establish, is the kind of content you want to follow, this channel covers exactly that. Every video in this series applies the same standard. What does the evidence actually say? What does it not say? And what does the gap between those two things tell us? There are angles in this case the public record has not yet fully examined. The sealed warrant affidavit sitting at the center of a $3.25 million civil claim, a document a Pima County judge approved based on real evidence investigators have never disclosed publicly, has a story that has not been told yet. If you want to be here when it is, make sure you are. And based on everything the record shows, the identification without attribution, the secondary market disclosure, the pattern across every physical evidence object in this case, I want to hear from you. What do you think is the investigation's most critical unanswered question right now? Not theories. Something specific. Leave it below. I read everyone. If you know anything about this case, you know anything at all, 1-800-CALL-FBI, tips.fbi.gov, the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-3514900, 88-CRIME at 520-88-CRIME. The combined reward stands at $1,202,500, unclaimed. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 201 days. All persons mentioned in connection with this investigation are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. This video presents analysis of publicly available information and verified official statements only. No conclusions regarding the guilt or innocence of any individual are drawn or intended. Reward figures, tip lines, and case status information reflect the public record as of August 20th, 2026, and may have changed. If you or someone you know has information relevant to this case, please contact the FBI or Pima County Sheriff's Department directly using the contact details provided in this video. Thanks for watching.